Everybody, welcome back to the Philosopher's Oracle. My name is Roshan, and today, as promised in the previous video, I'll be exploring Francois de la Rochefoucauld and his moral maxims. Well, as we know this, on the right side is the portrait of the maestro and the moralist, and on the other side is the book or the version of the book that I am reading of La Rochefoucauld's collected moral maxims and other reflections, along with his letters and essays. I highly recommend this book because it has both the French and the English translation side to side, as you can, and along it has a wonderful introduction into the maestro's life, along with his essay, his along with his essays, letters, reflections, other maxims which are not published, and the traditional maxims as well. So, and I highly recommend this book. Okay, it is Oxford World's Classic, a new translation of the parallel French text. So, if you want the original French text with the English translation, I highly recommend this book because I really loved it. So, moving on, so we'll start where everything starts. We are going to be exploring the life and writings of La Rochefoucauld, but instead of calling him La Rochefoucauld, I'll just call him Francois. So Francois, Prince of de Marsilia, was born in Paris in 1613. He came from the ancient French aristocratic family which had been prominent since the 11th century. So you must understand that this fellow, like the Marquis de Sade, is an aristocratic man. His family traced its origins in the 11th century, and five of his ancestors were born with the same name as him. So what can be great that you and your great great granddad have the same name? It's a bit weird and it's confusing, but this is how it was, and this was where he was born into. Okay, he became the Duke de la Rochefoucauld in 1650 on the death of his father, who had been granted the dukedom in 1622. So, moving on, he was actually born into France, and at the age of 15, he began to actively participate in a military life in his country. He fought the French army. He fought the French army against Spain, first in Italy in 1629 and later in the Netherlands in 1635. So La Rochefoucauld was born in France, aristocratic family, and as usual, like with the Marquis de Sade, he had a proper aristocratic education, which involved military training, training in mannerisms of those times, and like basic manners, like when you go, how you greet somebody, how you laugh, how you shouldn't, how you should eat, how you shouldn't, blah 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 blah. Okay, but we also have to understand that La Rochefoucauld lived in a time of great political upheaval. Okay, half of the 17th century France underwent a complex series of political struggles. Broadly speaking, the French aristocracy gradually lost their power. So the French aristocrats like La Rochefoucauld were not always as powerful as they were anymore. So I'll give you an example. Like before La Rochefoucauld, the aristocrats had more power than the king. But when La Rochefoucauld was born, the king started gaining more power over the aristocrats, and the aristocrats' power and authority started to diminish because France was being centralized with the help under King Louis, I don't know which Louis, for God's sake, and from 1610 to 1643, this ruler lived. And the mastermind behind this was Cardinal Richelieu. You must know him from the Three Musketeers as being that villainy fellow who tried to, upstage the Queen of France and whatnot. And as a result of this centralization, La Rochefoucauld himself found most of his authority being diminished, which he did not like. And later, he started taking part in the Fronde, a war against the French, a civil war where the aristocrats rebelled against the central government to retain their power. And this led to a lot of, issues where La Rochefoucauld got shot on the head, was blinded for a year, where he had to smuggle the Queen of France in and out of the country, giving him the name the gangster philosopher. But later on, La Rochefoucauld's life took a turn. He became part of a small social and literary group which included Jacques Esprit, Madeleine de Souvier, the Marquis de Sable, and all of these other well-known people or the French aristocracy. So that is basically Francois' life in a nutshell, I would say. And when he came into this, and after being shot in the head and blinded, he wrote his biography and later his moral maxims. And later, as we know, La Rochefoucauld died in Paris on March 17th, 1680. So that is basically the life of La Rochefoucauld. But I'm sorry, we do not have enough time to, go into details because his life is interesting. I mean, of the two books he wrote, the Moral Maxims and the other being his autobiography, you should really explore his autobiography because even his rivals in the government really admired him, even though one of his rivals, in fact, whom he tried to murder, also admired the capabilities of this young aristocrat. So, moving on, these are some of the pictures from the book I took and the notes I made. And these are some of the aphorisms of sayings of La Rochefoucauld that I want to discuss with all of you. One of La Rochefoucauld's most famous quote, which is not there over here, our virtues are most often only vices in disguise. So we must know that La Rochefoucauld had a big impact, and this one, what do you say, aphorism or quote more or less summarizes the entire book because La Rochefoucauld talks mostly about self-interest and passions, about how our whatever we do, even if we do it selflessly for others, our passions, our self-interest, it's all for ourselves. It's all for our self-interest, for ourselves, for nobody else, and we always try to hide it by saying that no, I'm not doing this for myself or I'm not doing it to satisfy my passions. I'm doing it because I love you, because I am great, because I'm generous, because I am selfless. And um, and La Rochefoucauld, after those incidents, after the Fronde, he started taking part in the salons and in these literary groups, and over there he noticed the behaviors of people, and after noticing and what do you say, observing the behaviors of various people, he wrote this Moral Maxims. It's a proto-psychological book because it talks about the human psyche. But I'll be going through some of the maxims. So this is the second maxim. Self-love is the greatest flatterer of all. The third one, whatever discoveries had been made in the realm of self-love, many unknown lands still remain. Self-love is cleverer than the cleverest man in the world. Now let's go analyzing first of all. Self love is the greatest flatterer of all. What does it mean? Meaning that our love for ourselves, it tends to flatter us, it tends to satisfy us. And whatever we do, for example, let's say I help somebody or I give money to a beggar, I'm not doing it because I care for the beggar, according to La Rochefoucauld. I do it because of my self love. And when I do that, it gives me a sort of satisfaction that I'm a good person. It flatters me in return. And that's the psychology that La Rochefoucauld represents, that he's harsh to himself and to you. And then when you read this book, you get a picture of the human psyche. The second aphorism, okay, is that self-love, that psychologically, everything we do, La Rochefoucauld believes is for self-love. We do so many things for self-love. But and it's obvious for every reason for La Rochefoucauld. I mean, for me, it's not that obvious. For La Rochefoucauld, it is because maybe I lack the intelligence the great philosopher had. But what he's trying to say is there's still many aspects of our character, of who we are, or the way we behave, which is still rooted in self love. We just do not know exactly how they're rooted in self love. That's what the second aphorism means. And the third aphorism is kind of a supportive to the first aphorism. See, self love is the greatest flatterer, but it's also extremely clever because self love deceives the individual. So we have to understand a couple of things, okay, of La Rochefoucauld's overall argument, okay, three things. One is that our self-love and passions flatter us. Second, it's we are selfish. Third is that they're very clever. Fourth is that they're disguised. So the first thing I just explained how our passions and our self-love flatters everybody. The second thing, how is it that they're so clever than man? Cleverer than even the cleverest man? I will explain to you. Most of the time, let's say you do something nice to your friend or to your families, you think you're doing it because you genuinely love them. And maybe you actually do genuinely love them. That's what you think. But that's not what it is. Larouche-Foucault says you're deceived or you're tricked into thinking that you're doing it for themselves, for them. But in reality, you're doing it for yourself, and you don't even know that because your self-love has tricked you into believing you're doing it for them. That is the brilliance of Larouche-Foucault. See, Larouche-Foucault explains that everything we do for self-love, let's say if I'm doing charity, I do it to satisfy myself love, to build a good image for myself. But I do not say I'm doing it for myself, I say I'm doing it for others. That's charity, that's selflessness. If I am being a good host, I want people to have a good impression on me, which is for my self-love. It's not because I really care for them. That's again what you say, being generous. If I am going to the temple, making good offerings, my piety, that is not because I genuinely am a religious person, but that's because I'm trying to create an image of being one for my own self love. That, and but I do not want to reveal that. I say it, I'm a religious man, I'm a devoted man, I'm a pious man. And sometimes our self love is so strong at deceiving us, we actually believe that we're doing it for that reason. That's what La Rochefoucauld means by the next aphorism. Okay, just like how self love is the greatest flatterer or it's the most cleverest thing, same way La Rochefoucauld makes a similar analysis for passions or desires. Passion often turns the cleverest man into a fool and often makes the worst fool clever. I didn't understand the last bit, but I understood the first bit. See, when you fall in love or when you have a sexual desire for anybody, in fact, your passion makes you, even if you're very smart, okay, even if you're a Nobel Prize winner, you don't think rationally and it turns you into a fool. La Rochefoucauld says. He's like, and this is from personal experience because La Rochefoucauld actually had a couple of love affairs for being the charming man he was, and he didn't act rationally or he didn't act in a very clever manner. Okay. And it's not just of La Rochefoucauld, we have so many examples in the world. For example, Alcibiades almost made a fool of himself in trying to seduce Socrates, and we have Nietzsche being rejected terribly by Louis Salome. So, yeah, even philosophers like them or great men have acted foolishly in the pursuit of love. But there are also, but the second half of the aphorism is the interesting thing. It makes the worst fool clever. A fool can become clever through, through his passions. For example, in Mikhail Lermontov's Hero of Our Times, Pichorin is considered to be a impulsive, stupid man. Okay, but uh, because of his desire for Princess Bela, because of his pursuit over Princess Mary, over his pursuit to prove himself to be the masculine man, for his passion, he ends up taking quite interesting and clever decisions, which is not expected of a fool like him. So yeah, uh, this is the two arguments from this part of the video I want to make is of passion, how passion tends to make us irrational, and how self love has dominion over our psychological attributes. The second quote, it's in V8. Passions are the only orators who succeed in persuading. They are, so to speak, a natural art with infallible rules. The most artless man who is passionate is more persuasive than the clever man. Okay, this is a supporting aphorism to the first one that passion turns the cleverest man into a fool. Now, how does passion turn you into a fool? Unless the passions are so persuasive, so enticing, so desirable, you will not agree to it. And the passions, La Rochefoucauld says, are persuasive, are enticing, are desirable. And that's what turns the wisest man into a fool, and sometimes the fools into wise men. So these are the two arguments on passion and self-love. This last one, clemency of rulers, is often a strategy to win the subject's affection. This, I feel, is again an example of how self love is a greatest flatterer and how it's very clever. Just like I gave examples of charity and piety, often great rulers, okay, like I'll give you an example Napoleon, he put on the show of clemency, he put on the show of freedom of religion and tolerance. But Napoleon was not really tolerant, he did not have clemency. Napoleon put on a show of clemency and tolerance so that the people support him. Oh, but really, Napoleon is just a self-interested man who cares only for himself, not for the people of France. And this again ties as an example, or a, what do you say, more or less, an evidence to his argument on self-love. So you often get so many types of, what do you say, supporting statements. For example, in this one page, he talks about self love. You get supporting statements related to that. He talks about passion. You get so many supporting statements that give more insight or, reaffirm the previous argument again. And Larouche-Foucault does this throughout the book. Some arguments are repeated in different manners. They either give insight or they support the argument which was made before. So these are just some of the arguments I'm giving you roughly. Over here, I made the case for self-love and passion that Larouche-Foucault made. Next, I'm going to talk about something that's very interesting. It's about praise. Okay, so here I'll start with the first thing. We often choose poison forms of praise which rebound and reverse in the people we are praising false. We dare do not divulge any other way. Okay, so what does LaRouche Foucault say? LaRouche Foucault says that just like the different types of poison, we try to praise people in different ways so that we can, you know, like obviously to flatter them, but we don't praise them because we genuinely like them. We praise them again. This ties back to Larouche Foucault's self interest. This man is all about self interest. He gave a essay, in fact, on self love and the ocean. I think I'll save that for another time. Or you should check another YouTube video. Before I read Larouche Foucault, there's another YouTube video from Nietzsche, the Nietzsche podcast, where they give an amazing what do you say, introduction to LaRouche Foucault. And I highly recommend going through that because that inspired me to create my own video on LaRouche Foucault. So heads up. So I really admire everybody from the Nietzsche podcast, and I think the YouTube name for it is Essentialism. And I think they deserve way more subscribers than they have, and hit the like button for them as well. So coming back to this, LaRouche Foucault says that we often praise people in different ways just so that we can be on the good side with them. Let's say if I praise the prime minister of some ex country, they are flattered. For all you know, they might end up helping me. They might end up praising me back. Okay, they might end up supporting me. So for all of these reasons, I praise them. I don't praise them because they are doing a good job. For all you know, they might be doing a terrible job. But I praise them because there's something in it for me, something that I can gain from this. And if you think about it, one of the things people often gain by giving praise is that they give praise themselves. So again, the aphorism 146 is kind of a supportive aphorism to 147, 145 because 145 talks about why we praise others. Okay, 145 says that we praise others so that we can get something back. But 146 says, what is the thing that we get back? We get back praise ourselves. I said that if I praise the prime minister of a country, they might support me. That's one thing I can get from them. But for all you know, they might praise me back, and that's even better because I tend to build up a reputation. So these two aphorisms on the top, I think they're highly connected to each other because one talks about one talks about how we praise others. The second talks about what benefit do we get from praising them. Again, this aphorism, again, the third one, a refusal of praise is a desire to be praised twice over. Again, supports the previous two aphorisms. It gives more depth. Like this fellow talks only about praise in this part of the book, but he's giving arguments, he's giving supporting arguments, he's giving what do you say, and over he's giving more depth to the concept of praise, because we praise others to receive praise, and if we deny praise, it's to be praised again. See, if for example you say, I'm a great man, or I'm a great philosopher, you tell that to me, I'll say, no, 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 I'm not a great philosopher. But the real reason I'm saying I'm not a great philosopher is that I want you to praise me more. And this has happened on TV. You go to TV or any show, okay, there are instances or scenes where people deny praise and they get praised even more. And go to any salon or anywhere outside the world or any drunkard party, you'll notice this. That's why I say La Rochefoucauld is a psychologist of the highest order, because he dives into the human psyche and he brings out all of our darkest desires or all of our darkest, what do you say, wishes to light. Now, the last aphorism that I'll be discussing, our desire, uh, our desire to deserve the praise that is bestowed on us strengthens our virtue. The praise is bestowed on intelligence, valor, and beauty helps us to enhance them. So basically, when I get praised for being a smart man, okay, it strengthens my thing to become even more smarter, to become even more. If I praise you, dear subscribers, that you guys are valorous, okay, your desire would be to be even more valorous, to become even more stronger, even more braver. Okay, so praise acts as this, what do you say? It acts as this fuel for you to be better in some sense, not to be worse. So La Rochefoucauld in this aphorism, again, he's giving more depth to the concept of praise by stating that sometimes it acts as a fuel for you to be better. Although I disagree with it, because sometimes praise can tend to kill off their, what do you say, uh, kill the desire to do better. But in some cases it can also enhance it. So I mean, it depends on the circumstance. Well, we spoke about La Rochefoucauld, and obviously his, what do you say, influence is ever extending. I mean, he has inspired people like Voltaire, Proust de Gaulle, Nietzsche, and Arthur Conan Doyle, the author of Sherlock Holmes. So we have to understand that La Rochefoucauld's thoughts are very insightful, and they often revolve around self love, vice, virtue, love, jealousy, friendship, self interest, passion, and pride. These are La Rochefoucauld's areas of expertise. And see, over here you have two people who have been inspired by La Rochefoucauld. One is Voltaire, the other one is Jonathan Swift. You've heard of Gulliver's Travels, there's a movie on it. That's Jonathan Swift's work. He has inspired these two men. And here we have Friedrich Nietzsche, and I forgot the name of the other person. He's a great writer in English literature. And since I'm a big Nietzsche fan, for the record, I am reading Nietzsche's Das Buch Zarathustra, and I have often and I've in one of the passages, the concept of praise which La Rochefoucauld makes in his moral maxims, Nietzsche has reiterated in Das Buch Zarathustra, and I am shocked about the parallels between these two thinkers and how La Rochefoucauld has influenced Nietzsche's thoughts. Because from Nietzsche's opinion on the slave morality, the master morality, his understanding of the human psyche, and some snippets of La Rochefoucauld uses in between his books, especially in Das Buch Zarathustra, it's inspiring and it's crazy about how someone from the French world, like even before the French Enlightenment, could inspire this book, which itself would inspire major world events. So you must understand that La Rochefoucauld is no ordinary man, and that his influence is far reaching. And I will leave you off by stating that I'm not going to tell you which philosopher or writer or whoever I'm going to explore next time, but like and subscribe, and please continue to watch more. And next week, I will most likely be coming in uh, with someone quite different. I'm not going to mention who. I prefer to keep it a surprise. Most likely, it will be Nietzsche, I hope, or maybe it might not. I'm going to leave you off just guessing, and I'm going to leave you off with one of my favorite La Rochefoucauld quotes. Okay, humility is the true test of the Christian virtues. Without it, we restrain all our faults. They are merely covered by pride, which hides them from other people and often from ourselves. With this quote, I'll leave you thinking, what could it be? What could it mean? That is basically your homework to figure it out. If you don't use Google and if you can write it in the comment box, what do you think about this quote? What do you think it means? That would be amazing. I would really highly appreciate it. And as a summary, we just basically discussed his life, his influence, his ideas on self love, passion, and praise. And the praise thing, I'm telling you guys, just focus on that part because it can go really crazy. He talks about praise for a couple of pages. He gives a lot of insight into it, and that's my favorite part of this book. So, thanks and bye. And again, think about the quote. I'll be waiting for your answer. Like and subscribe. I'll be leaving you. And I'm leaving you with this thought.